A Swiss guard speaks about the new Pope Robert Prevost on a live interview. What he reveals is, the morning sun rose gently over Vatican City, casting a soft golden light on the centuries-old walls and cobblestone streets. Luca Mayer, a Swiss guard with nearly a decade of service, adjusted his ceremonial uniform in front of the small mirror in the guardhouse. He meticulously checked every detail, from the polished buttons to the perfectly tied belt. To Luca, the uniform was more than clothing. It was a symbol of loyalty, discipline, and a bond with history that stretched back hundreds of years. Each day, standing at his post, he was reminded of the sacred duty he had taken on to protect the Pope and uphold the traditions of the Vatican. Despite the solemnity of his role, this morning felt different. As Luca walked through the quiet corridors leading to St. Peter's Basilica, he sensed a quiet tension in the air. The guards were usually calm, moving with a practiced precision, but today, whispers of anticipation floated among them. Something unusual was happening, something that went beyond the usual routines of patrols and ceremonial duties. Luca soon learned the reason. A major news network had requested a live interview with a Swiss guard to share an insider perspective on the Vatican, and he had been chosen. The interview was to focus on the newly elected Pope Robert Prevost, a man whose reputation had spread quickly, intriguing not only Catholics but people around the world. For Luca, the request was both an honor and a challenge. Swiss guards are known for their discretion. They are trained to be loyal, silent protectors, not public figures. Speaking openly about the inner life of the Vatican could feel like stepping into unfamiliar territory. As he prepared, Luca reflected on his own journey to this point. Born and raised in a small town in Switzerland, he had grown up with stories of the Swiss guards' bravery and commitment. Inspired by these tales, he had joined the corps after rigorous training. The first months had been demanding. Long hours of drills, learning ancient protocols, mastering the art of ceremonial duties, and understanding the gravity of the responsibilities he had embraced. Over time, he had grown comfortable in this world of discipline and devotion, finding pride in the honor of serving within the walls of the Vatican. But today was different. Today, he would step into the spotlight. He reminded himself that this was an opportunity to show the world a side of the Vatican few ever see. The life of the guards, their experiences, and the unique ways in which Pope Prevost had already begun to change the atmosphere within the Holy City. The studio team arrived in the early afternoon, carrying cameras, microphones, and bright lights. Luca followed them through the narrow streets to a small, temporary setup in one of the Vatican courtyards. As the crew adjusted the equipment, he took a moment to look around. The stone walls, the carefully trimmed gardens, and the distant silhouette of St. Peter's dome all felt familiar, yet today they seemed to shine with a new significance. The interviewer, a warm and professional journalist named Sophia, greeted Luca with a friendly smile. She asked him to relax and speak naturally, assuring him that the goal was not to expose secrets but to share human experiences. Luca nodded, appreciating her approach. He had always admired Pope Prevost's transparency and kindness, and he wanted his words to reflect that same spirit of sincerity. As the cameras began rolling, Luca took a deep breath and started speaking. He began with his own story, describing the path that had led him to the Vatican. He spoke about the rigorous training, the dedication required, and the pride he felt in wearing the uniform. He told viewers that being a Swiss guard was not just a job, it was a calling, a responsibility intertwined with history and faith. Then he shifted to the heart of the matter, Pope Robert Prevost. Luca carefully chose his words, knowing that millions would be listening. He explained that from the moment Pope Prevost was elected, there was an air of curiosity and excitement. The Pope's approach was different from what many expected. Instead of maintaining a distant formality, he made efforts to personally connect with those around him, including the Swiss guards. Luca recounted the first time he met the Pope after the election. He remembered feeling a mix of nervousness and admiration. Pope Prevost had approached the guards with a warm smile, speaking directly to each of them and asking about their well-being. This simple act, Luca explained, left a deep impression. It was unusual for someone in such a position of immense authority to take the time to connect personally with the people who served him. He shared more anecdotes, painting a picture of the Pope's character. He described how Pope Prevost had attended a morning ceremony with the guards, quietly observing their drills and even offering gentle suggestions for improvement. Luca remembered the humility with which the Pope conducted himself, never demanding attention but naturally earning respect through kindness and example. These moments, Luca said, revealed a leader who understood the human side of responsibility, a rare quality in a world often defined by tradition and protocol. The interview also touched on the daily life of the guards. Luca spoke of early mornings, long hours of standing at attention, and the silent vigilance required to ensure the Pope's safety. He explained that their training included not only physical preparedness, but also the cultivation of patience, discipline, and a keen awareness of their surroundings. Each guard, he said, was trained to anticipate potential challenges while remaining composed, no matter the situation. He told viewers about the sense of community among the guards, describing how they relied on one another for support, guidance, and encouragement. Despite the ceremonial nature of their duties, there was a profound bond that went beyond uniforms and formalities. They shared stories, celebrated small victories, and comforted one another during moments of stress. Luca emphasized that this camaraderie was strengthened by the presence of a leader like Pope Prevost, whose empathy and attention to detail made everyone feel valued. Throughout the conversation, Luca's tone remained calm but engaging. He avoided sensational details, focusing instead on the small, meaningful interactions that shaped life within the Vatican. He spoke of the quiet pride he felt in serving a pope who respected tradition yet embraced humanity. He explained that while the world often sees only the grandeur of Vatican ceremonies, the real story unfolded behind the walls. The laughter shared during brief moments of rest, the encouragement given to a nervous new recruit, and the silent dedication of those who protected the Holy Father day and night. Sophia, the interviewer, asked Luca about the challenges of speaking publicly while maintaining loyalty to the Pope and the institution. Luca admitted it was a delicate balance. Swiss guards are taught to be discreet, and revealing too much could undermine trust. But he also recognized the importance of sharing the positive impact Pope Prevost had on the Vatican community. His words were measured, honest, and heartfelt, reflecting a deep respect for both his role and the man he served. As the interview progressed, Luca sensed a shift. The initial nerves melted away, replaced by a quiet confidence. He realized that this was an opportunity to honor the Pope, the guards, and the values they represented. He spoke about the subtle ways in which Pope Prevost had already begun to influence the atmosphere of the Vatican, through small gestures, personal attention, and an unwavering commitment to kindness and justice. The conversation drew to a close, but Luca's message lingered. He hoped viewers would understand that the life of a Swiss guard was not defined solely by ceremony or discipline, but by loyalty, faith, and the human connections that made every day meaningful. He wanted people to see that behind the iconic uniforms and historical walls, there were real people with real stories, guided by a leader who inspired them through humility, respect, and compassion. As the cameras stopped rolling, Luca felt a mix of relief and satisfaction. He had spoken from the heart, offering a glimpse into a world few outsiders ever experienced. The crew thanked him for his openness, praising his ability to communicate the essence of life within the Vatican. Luca returned to his post with a renewed sense of purpose, quietly proud that he had honored his duty in a new way, by sharing the human side of the Swiss Guard and the remarkable presence of Pope Robert Prevost. Walking back through the serene courtyards, Luca reflected on the morning. The sunlight glinted off the stone pathways, the distant bells of St. Peter's echoed through the city, and a gentle breeze carried the faint scent of flowers from the Vatican gardens. He felt a profound connection to the place, to its history, and to the people who had become his family. More than ever, he understood that his role was not just about guarding the Pope, but about embodying the values that made the Vatican a symbol of faith, hope, and humanity. In that moment, Luca realized something important. Sharing a story did not diminish his loyalty, it strengthened it. By speaking honestly about his experiences and the extraordinary character of Pope Prevost, he had created a bridge between the world outside and the quiet, sacred life within the Vatican walls. He had offered a glimpse of history in motion, a living, breathing story of dedication, humility, and the remarkable people who shaped the legacy of this ancient city. And so, as he resumed his duties, standing tall in his ceremonial uniform, Luca carried with him a quiet pride. The Swiss Guard was not just a protector of the Pope. He was a witness to history, a storyteller of the unseen, and a guardian of values that transcended time. The live interview had been more than an opportunity. It was a reminder of why he served, why he believed, and why every small action mattered in the unfolding story of the Vatican and the remarkable Pope Robert Prevost. After the live interview, Luca Mayer felt a renewed sense of purpose. The spotlight had faded, but the life inside the Vatican continued, full of routines, responsibilities, and unexpected moments that no one outside could truly understand. For Luca and his fellow Swiss guards, the arrival of Pope Robert Prevost had transformed even the most ordinary days into experiences that carried meaning beyond their formal duties. Luca began his day early, as always. The crisp morning air brushed against his face as he walked through the Vatican courtyards, the soft sound of his shoes echoing on the stone pathways. Despite the familiar surroundings, he noticed something different, a sense of energy and warmth that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the Vatican. Pope Prevost had a way of influencing the atmosphere without even trying, simply through his presence and manner. The Pope had made it a point to personally engage with the guards. Unlike his predecessors, who maintained a formal distance, he would greet each guard individually, often asking questions about their families, their well-being, and even their personal interests. Luca remembered one morning when the Pope had asked about his hometown in Switzerland and whether he still played the violin in his spare time. It was a small gesture, but it left a lasting impression. Luca felt valued, not just as a protector of the Pope, but as a person. During one of the routine morning assemblies, Luca observed Pope Prevost standing quietly at the back, listening intently as the guards went through their drills. The Pope's eyes were focused, his posture calm yet attentive. When he finally spoke, it was not with authority but with encouragement. "You are doing well," he said softly, "but remember, it is not just precision that matters, it is the heart behind your actions." These words resonated deeply with Luca. In the military-like world of the Swiss Guards, precision and discipline were everything. Yet here was a leader reminding them of the human side of their service, a perspective that felt both refreshing and inspiring. Over the following weeks, Luca began noticing subtle changes in the routines of the Vatican. Pope Prevost encouraged small innovations, a more organized schedule for guard rotations, brief opportunities for reflection and prayer during long shifts, and even the inclusion of simple recreational activities to lift morale. The guards were allowed short walks in the gardens, brief discussions about their personal goals, and moments to share experiences with one another. While these changes were minor on the surface, they had a profound impact on the daily life of those serving within the Vatican walls. One afternoon, Luca found himself assigned to accompany the Pope on a short walk through the Vatican gardens. The trees were lush, and the sunlight filtered gently through the leaves, casting patterns on the stone pathways. Luca kept a respectful distance, observing as Pope Prevost moved with a quiet grace, speaking to a visiting cleric with warmth and attentiveness. At one point, the Pope stopped to admire a small fountain, a thoughtful expression on his face. Luca realized that even in these simple moments, the Pope was teaching by example, patience, reflection, and appreciation for the beauty in small details. During these walks, Luca witnessed the Pope's unique ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Children visiting the Vatican were greeted with gentle smiles and soft-spoken words. Staff members were approached with genuine curiosity about their lives and well-being. Luca remembered one encounter in particular. A young kitchen worker nervously approached the Pope to ask a question about a new menu item. Instead of brushing him off, Pope Prevost knelt down to the worker's level, listened attentively, and offered advice with kindness and humor. Luca observed the scene quietly, struck by the humility and accessibility of a man who carried the weight of the Catholic Church on his shoulders. The Pope's approach extended to the guards as well. He began holding brief gatherings with them, not to give orders, but to engage in conversation. He asked about their training experiences, their personal challenges, and even their thoughts on ways to improve their daily routines. These moments were rare, and Luca realized that such openness fostered trust and loyalty in ways that formal commands never could. The guards began to feel not only a sense of duty, but also a sense of belonging and mutual respect. One evening, Luca was stationed at the entrance of a small chapel within the Vatican. He noticed Pope Prevost quietly entering the chapel, his head bowed in prayer. The room was dimly lit by candlelight, casting a serene glow on the ancient stone walls. Luca paused, unsure whether to interrupt, and chose instead to stand silently at a distance. He watched as the Pope knelt, hands folded, whispering prayers in a voice so soft it was almost inaudible. Luca felt a profound sense of reverence. Here was a leader who, despite the immense responsibilities and public attention, devoted time to reflection, humility, and personal connection with his faith. It was a reminder that the Pope's strength was rooted not just in leadership, but in devotion. As days turned into weeks, Luca began noticing the ways Pope Prevost's presence influenced the culture within the Vatican. Guards were more attentive to one another, offering support and guidance without being asked. Clergy members began seeking the Pope's counsel on matters that extended beyond formal duties, trusting his judgment and wisdom. Even visitors seemed to sense the difference. There was a warmth and accessibility in the Vatican that had previously been rare. Luca also observed challenges. Change, even small, was not always easy. Some senior officials were skeptical of the Pope's approach, concerned that informality and openness could undermine centuries of tradition. Tensions occasionally surfaced during administrative meetings, and Luca could sense the careful balancing act Pope Prevost had to perform. Yet, despite these challenges, he maintained a calm demeanor, addressing concerns with patience and thoughtful reasoning. Luca admired this deeply. Leadership, he realized, was not only about decisions and authority, but about the ability to inspire trust, encourage growth, and respect both tradition and innovation. The Pope's humility was evident in everyday interactions. Luca remembered an afternoon when a visiting diplomat arrived unexpectedly. Instead of hosting a formal meeting in a grand hall, Pope Prevost invited the diplomat to walk through the gardens with him. They spoke casually, laughing and sharing stories, while Luca and a few other guards followed at a respectful distance. It was a simple gesture, yet it conveyed respect, authenticity, and a willingness to connect on a human level. Luca realized that these moments, though quiet and informal, carried a power far greater than any ceremonial display. Even in formal events, Pope Prevost's influence was felt. During an important audience with representatives from other countries, Luca noticed how the Pope's demeanor set the tone. His calm, thoughtful words encouraged dialogue, fostered understanding, and diffused potential tension. Luca understood that leadership was not only about public appearances, but about creating an environment where respect, empathy, and cooperation could flourish. Back in the guard quarters, Luca reflected on these experiences. He shared stories with fellow guards, emphasizing not the grandeur of the events but the lessons he had observed: humility, kindness, attentiveness, and courage. The Pope's leadership had sparked a subtle transformation in their daily lives, reinforcing the idea that small actions and personal connections could have far-reaching effects. Guards began to carry these lessons into their own interactions, with each other and with visitors, creating a ripple of positive influence throughout the Vatican. Luca also began keeping a personal journal, documenting moments that stood out: simple yet meaningful interactions, private gestures of care, and the unexpected warmth in the Pope's demeanor. He did not intend to share these writings publicly. They were for reflection, a way to process the profound experiences unfolding around him. In reading and writing about these moments, Luca deepened his appreciation for the life he had chosen, the duty he upheld, and the man he served. The weeks continued, filled with both ordinary and extraordinary experiences. Luca noticed that the Pope's presence instilled a quiet confidence in the guards. There was a sense of reassurance, a feeling that they were part of something larger than themselves. It was not just about guarding the Pope's physical safety. It was about upholding the values he represented: integrity, compassion, and dedication. Luca felt proud to be part of a community that was slowly evolving under the guidance of a leader who balanced tradition with empathy and care. One day, as Luca stood near the entrance of the basilica, he observed the Pope interacting with a group of young visitors. Pope Prevost knelt down to speak with a child who had questions about the Vatican, answering patiently and even encouraging the child to explore curiosity and faith. Luca watched silently, touched by the simple beauty of the interaction. These small moments, he realized, were the true measure of leadership, the ability to inspire, guide, and nurture without the need for grandeur or ceremony. By the end of the second month under Pope Prevost, Luca felt a transformation not only in the Vatican, but also within himself. He approached his duties with renewed enthusiasm, carrying a deeper understanding of his role and its significance. The Pope's influence extended beyond policies and ceremonies. It had touched hearts, fostering a sense of community, respect, and mutual support. Luca saw the Swiss Guards not just as protectors, but as ambassadors of these values, embodying lessons learned through observation and experience. Through all these experiences, Luca maintained a sense of wonder. He had joined the Swiss Guard with a sense of duty and pride, but Pope Prevost had opened his eyes to a deeper dimension of service, one where human connection, empathy, and humility were as important as vigilance and discipline. Luca felt grateful for the opportunity to witness history, to serve a leader who exemplified the qualities he admired, and to be part of a story that transcended the ordinary routines of life. And so, day after day, Luca continued his duties with a quiet sense of purpose. Each patrol, each ceremony, each interaction was a chance to embody the lessons he had observed. The presence of Pope Robert Prevost transformed not just the Vatican, but the people within it, instilling values that would ripple outward in ways no one could fully measure. For Luca, this was the true heart of service, being part of a living story, guided by a leader who inspired, respected, and cared in ways that were both profound and simple. Life inside the Vatican continued with a quiet rhythm, but for Luca Mayer and his fellow Swiss Guards, every day brought new experiences under Pope Robert Prevost. By this point, Luca had grown used to the Pope's presence not only in ceremonies and official events, but in the small, subtle moments that revealed his character most vividly. Yet despite the familiarity, there were surprises, moments that reminded Luca that no one could fully anticipate the ways in which a true leader shaped the people around him. One morning, Luca was stationed near a side corridor that led to the Pope's private office. It was an area that few ever entered without a purpose, and even fewer had the privilege to observe. As he stood at attention, Luca noticed a small gathering of senior Vatican officials entering the hall. They were discussing upcoming reforms and administrative changes, their voices low but urgent. Luca listened quietly, his curiosity piqued. Pope Prevost had been making subtle, yet meaningful, changes in the Vatican's administration, changes designed to improve efficiency, transparency, and communication. Some of these changes had surprised even the most experienced officials. For example, he encouraged departments that had historically operated in isolation to share updates and collaborate more openly. He also advocated for modernizing communication channels with the global Catholic community, including more frequent messages and digital outreach to people who might never visit the Vatican in person. Luca remembered one meeting in particular. The Pope had asked the officials to present their ideas not just in writing, but in simple, understandable terms. He emphasized that the goal was not to show off knowledge or maintain appearances, but to ensure clarity and understanding. "Our mission," Pope Prevost had said softly, "is to guide with wisdom and serve with transparency. Every action should reflect care for the people, not just the institution." Luca observed how the officials nodded, some appearing hesitant at first, but gradually understanding the value of this approach. The Swiss Guards, of course, were not directly involved in administrative reforms, but they witnessed the impact through the Pope's interactions. Luca noticed a sense of openness in meetings, a willingness among staff to listen, adjust, and collaborate. Even the guards themselves began to feel the effects, as their feedback and suggestions were now welcomed in small, practical ways. The Pope had asked them about routines, schedules, and ways to improve daily life, showing that leadership could include everyone, not just those in formal positions of power. One afternoon, Luca found himself walking alongside the Pope during a short inspection of the Vatican gardens. Pope Prevost had a calm, attentive presence that drew Luca into reflection. As they passed by flowering trees and carefully tended fountains, the Pope spoke quietly about the importance of balance, balancing tradition with modernity, authority with humility, and discipline with compassion. Luca realized that these walks were lessons in leadership, delivered without grand speeches but through observation and quiet dialogue. During this time, Luca also witnessed the Pope addressing challenges with grace and patience. There were disagreements, of course. Some clergy members and senior officials were hesitant about certain reforms, or the more personal approach Pope Prevost took with staff and guards. Yet, rather than reacting with frustration or anger, the Pope engaged them calmly, listening to their concerns and responding thoughtfully. Luca noted that even in moments of tension, Pope Prevost remained composed, using empathy and careful reasoning to foster understanding. One story that Luca often recalled involved a small incident in the Vatican library. A young staff member had made an administrative mistake, creating confusion in scheduling for an important event. Many feared that the response would be harsh. But when Pope Prevost learned of the error, he called the staff member into his private office. He spoke with kindness, explaining the situation, offering guidance, and encouraging them to learn from the experience. Luca saw the relief and gratitude on the young worker's face. It was a simple moment, but it illustrated the Pope's ability to lead with compassion rather than fear. Luca also noticed the ways in which Pope Prevost quietly strengthened connections between people. He initiated small gatherings where guards, staff, and clergy could share experiences, discuss ideas, or simply enjoy a moment of camaraderie. During one such gathering, Luca saw guards laughing with members of the Vatican staff over stories from their training days. The atmosphere was informal but meaningful. Everyone left feeling recognized, respected, and valued. Luca realized that these seemingly small gestures built trust and loyalty in ways that rules and orders alone could not. The Pope's commitment to personal connection extended even beyond the Vatican. Luca observed how he met visitors from around the world with patience and attention, regardless of their status or background. People who might have felt intimidated in such a grand setting were met with warmth and understanding. On one occasion, a group of pilgrims arrived unexpectedly, hoping to speak with the Pope. Rather than rushing the meeting, Pope Prevost walked with them through a quiet corridor, answering their questions, offering blessings, and even listening to their stories of faith and struggle. Luca followed at a respectful distance, admiring the way the Pope made each person feel seen and heard. But leadership was not only about gentle interactions, it also involved courage in decision-making. Luca saw the Pope make choices that were both thoughtful and bold, navigating complex issues with wisdom. He introduced reforms slowly, ensuring they were well understood and accepted, rather than imposed abruptly. Luca recognized that this careful approach reflected a deep understanding of human nature, an awareness that change, even positive, could be challenging if handled without consideration. One evening, after a long day of patrol, Luca found a quiet moment in the guard quarters to reflect on everything he had witnessed. He thought about the countless small acts of leadership, the patience, humility, and kindness that Pope Prevost displayed daily. It struck him that these moments, while often unnoticed by the public, were shaping the Vatican in profound ways. The Pope's approach inspired not only obedience and respect, but a genuine desire to serve, to contribute meaningfully, and to act with integrity. Luca also began noticing the subtle ways in which Pope Prevost fostered spiritual growth among the guards. During brief discussions, the Pope would encourage reflection, reminding them that their service was not only about protection but also about living with purpose, faith, and compassion. These conversations were quiet, often unplanned, but they left a lasting impression. Luca felt that the Pope was teaching through example as much as through words, showing that leadership could be both practical and deeply moral. As the months passed, Luca observed changes in the Vatican community. Guards were more attentive to each other, staff members felt heard, and the atmosphere became warmer, more collaborative. Even visiting dignitaries and pilgrims commented on the unique sense of care they experienced. Pope Prevost's leadership had created ripples of positive influence, reaching far beyond his immediate actions. Luca felt privileged to witness this transformation firsthand. One memorable day, Luca was assigned to accompany the Pope during a private visit to a nearby hospital for the sick and elderly. The Pope moved quietly through the wards, speaking gently to patients, listening to their stories and offering blessings. Luca saw the joy and comfort that the Pope brought to those who were often forgotten by the world. It was a vivid reminder that leadership was not confined to grand halls or formal meetings. It was about touching lives in ways that mattered with patience, humility, and sincerity. Through all these experiences, Luca began to understand the true depth of Pope Prevost's leadership. It was not about authority alone, nor about impressive gestures or ceremonies. It was about connecting with people, fostering trust, embracing humility, and inspiring others to live with purpose and kindness. The Pope's presence was transformative, encouraging the guards and staff to approach their roles with renewed dedication and awareness. Luca also began sharing his reflections with younger guards. He told them about the lessons he had observed, the importance of patience, empathy, and attentiveness, the value of small acts of kindness, and the power of leading by example rather than through force. The younger guards listened with admiration, absorbing the lessons as they carried out their own duties. Luca realized that Pope Prevost's influence extended beyond immediate interactions. It was shaping the next generation of leaders within the Vatican. Even in quiet, routine moments, the Pope's guidance left an imprint. Luca often remembered seeing Pope Prevost pause to admire a small garden, to speak with a janitor, or to offer encouragement to a nervous newcomer. These moments were simple yet profound, illustrating that leadership was as much about everyday choices and attention to detail as it was about major decisions. Luca felt inspired to approach his duties with the same mindfulness, knowing that every interaction mattered. By the end of the third part of Luca's journey, he had witnessed the Pope's impact on nearly every aspect of life within the Vatican. From administrative reforms to personal interactions, from spiritual guidance to quiet encouragement, Pope Prevost's influence was evident in countless ways. Luca felt a sense of pride, not only in serving the Pope, but in being part of a community that was growing stronger, more connected, and more compassionate under his guidance. Reflecting on these experiences, Luca realized that history was unfolding before him. He was not only a protector of the Pope, but a witness to the subtle, transformative power of leadership rooted in empathy, humility, and human connection. Each day, he observed lessons that went beyond protocol or ceremony, lessons about kindness, responsibility, courage, and the profound effect one person could have on an entire community. And so, as Luca continued his duties, he carried these lessons with him. Every patrol, every ceremony, every interaction was an opportunity to embody the values he had observed. The Vatican was no longer just a place of tradition and ritual. It had become a living environment shaped by a leader who inspired hearts and minds. Luca understood that the true story of Pope Prevost was not only in public appearances or official acts, but in the countless private moments that revealed his character, vision, and humanity. As the months passed in the Vatican, Luca Mayer felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had grown accustomed to the rhythms of daily life, the formal ceremonies, and the quiet vigilance of the Swiss guards. Yet, more than routines and duties, it was the influence of Pope Robert Prevost that had transformed his experience. The Pope's leadership had left an imprint not only on the Vatican itself, but also on the hearts and minds of those who served within its walls. Luca had observed countless moments that revealed the essence of the new Pope, moments of humility, kindness, and genuine concern for others. Whether in private corridors or during public ceremonies, Pope Prevost's actions consistently reflected a commitment to people above protocol, compassion over appearances, and faith over fear. Luca understood that his role as a guard was not just to protect the Pope physically, but also to uphold the values and spirit he embodied. One morning, Luca was stationed near the entrance of a small chapel that few visitors saw. It was a quiet place, filled with the soft scent of incense and the gentle flicker of candlelight. Pope Prevost arrived quietly, unaccompanied, and knelt in silent prayer. Luca stood at his post, as he always did, but this time he felt a sense of awe. The Pope's dedication to his faith, even amidst the immense responsibilities of leadership, was humbling. It reminded Luca that true leadership was rooted in inner strength and spiritual guidance. In addition to spiritual guidance, Pope Prevost had a unique way of connecting with everyone in the Vatican. Luca remembered how the Pope made an effort to know the names of staff members, guards, and even volunteers who helped with daily tasks. Simple gestures, like asking about a guard's family or offering encouragement to a nervous worker, created a sense of belonging. Luca realized that this attention to detail, this human touch, made the Vatican not just an institution, but a community bound by respect and care. During official events, the Pope's influence was equally profound. Luca had observed countless ceremonies, from traditional masses to diplomatic meetings, and he noticed how Pope Prevost's demeanor set the tone. His calm presence, thoughtful words, and attentive listening encouraged cooperation, diffused tension, and inspired respect. Even in moments of potential conflict or disagreement, the Pope's approach fostered understanding and harmony. Luca understood that leadership was not about commanding attention. It was about creating an environment where people felt heard, valued, and motivated to do their best. One afternoon, Luca accompanied Pope Prevost on a visit to a local school. The children, full of curiosity and energy, were eager to meet the Pope. Instead of maintaining a formal distance, Pope Prevost knelt to speak with each child, listening attentively to their questions and stories. He offered words of encouragement, gentle guidance, and blessings. Luca observed the joy and excitement on the children's faces, realizing that these small interactions had the power to shape young lives profoundly. It was a reminder that leadership extended far beyond administrative duties. It touched hearts, inspired hope, and nurtured future generations. The Pope's dedication to the people extended to those working behind the scenes as well. Luca often noticed him checking in with kitchen staff, cleaners, and maintenance workers, acknowledging their efforts and offering words of gratitude. These moments, though unnoticed by the wider public, created an atmosphere of mutual respect and appreciation. Luca felt inspired to approach his own duties with the same mindset, to serve not only through action, but also through consideration and kindness. Despite the remarkable humility and compassion Pope Prevost displayed, he also faced challenges. Change within an ancient institution like the Vatican was never easy. Some senior officials were cautious, even resistant, to reforms and new approaches. Luca observed moments of tension during meetings, but what stood out was the Pope's ability to remain composed. He listened carefully, responded thoughtfully, and guided discussions with wisdom and patience. Luca admired this deeply. It was a lesson in leadership, to face challenges with calmness, to inspire confidence without force, and to balance tradition with progress. In the quiet moments of reflection, Luca often thought about the lessons he had learned. Pope Prevost had taught him that leadership was about more than authority. It was about empathy, humility, and service. The Swiss guards, often perceived as silent protectors, were now part of a larger story, witnesses to and participants in the transformation of the Vatican. Luca felt proud to be part of this history, knowing that his vigilance, discipline, and dedication supported a leader who embodied the values he himself aspired to uphold. The Pope also encouraged the guards to reflect on their own personal growth. During informal gatherings, he would speak gently about responsibility, ethics, and the importance of acting with integrity in every situation. Luca remembered one evening when the Pope shared a simple story about a historical Swiss guard who had shown courage in a moment of crisis. He explained that courage was not only about facing danger, but also about making the right choices, even when no one was watching. Luca found these stories deeply inspiring. They reminded him that his role was part of a continuum, a living tradition that connected past, present, and future. As the months turned into a year, Luca noticed a subtle but significant transformation in the Vatican community. The guards were more supportive of one another, staff members collaborated more effectively, and a sense of shared purpose permeated the atmosphere. Visitors commented on the warmth and accessibility they experienced, often noting the genuine kindness they felt from everyone they met. Luca realized that Pope Prevost's leadership had created a ripple effect, touching not only individuals but the entire community. Luca also witnessed the Pope's quiet acts of courage and conviction. On one occasion, he made a decision to address a sensitive issue concerning the administration, choosing transparency over convenience. It was a difficult choice, and some were initially uncertain about the outcome. Yet, by addressing the matter openly and with integrity, Pope Prevost earned the trust and respect of everyone involved. Luca understood that true leadership required not only empathy but also moral courage, the willingness to do what was right, even when it was not easy. During quieter moments, Luca reflected on the personal impact of serving under Pope Prevost. He felt that his understanding of service, duty, and leadership had deepened. Every patrol, every ceremony, and every interaction was imbued with meaning, guided by the example set by the Pope. Luca's sense of pride was not only in the duties he performed, but in the values he upheld, the same values he saw reflected in Pope Prevost's words and actions. The Pope's influence was also evident in the spiritual life of the Vatican. Luca noticed that the guards were more mindful of their personal reflection and prayer, inspired by the example of humility and devotion they observed daily. The Pope's presence encouraged introspection, compassion, and a focus on the greater good. Even small moments, like walking quietly through the gardens or pausing before a statue, became opportunities for reflection and growth. One of Luca's most memorable experiences was witnessing the Pope interact with a group of elderly pilgrims. Many had traveled long distances, some with physical difficulties or health concerns. Pope Prevost spoke with each person individually, offering encouragement and blessings, listening carefully to their stories, and showing genuine concern for their well-being. Luca followed discreetly, moved by the depth of care and attention the Pope provided. It was a vivid reminder that leadership was not measured solely by authority, ceremonies, or speeches. It was measured by the ability to touch lives, inspire hope, and bring comfort to those in need. As the year progressed, Luca observed how Pope Prevost's example influenced not only individuals but the broader culture of the Vatican. Guards, staff, clergy, and even visitors began to act with greater mindfulness, patience, and respect. Collaboration increased, misunderstandings were resolved more peacefully, and a sense of shared purpose strengthened the entire community. Luca felt privileged to be part of this transformation, understanding that true leadership created ripples far beyond the immediate sphere of influence. In his quiet moments, Luca often reflected on the personal growth he had experienced. Serving under Pope Prevost had taught him lessons that went beyond protocol or ceremony. He had learned about empathy, patience, humility, and moral courage. He had learned that leadership was about connecting with people, fostering trust, and inspiring others through example rather than authority. And most importantly, he had learned that even small acts, offering encouragement, listening carefully, showing respect, could create profound and lasting impact. As he continued his duties, Luca also noticed the Pope's lasting influence on visitors. People who came to the Vatican often commented on the warmth, respect, and humanity they felt. They spoke of feeling seen and heard, of experiencing genuine kindness and care. Luca realized that these impressions were not accidental. They were the result of Pope Prevost's consistent approach, his dedication to humility, and his unwavering commitment to the well-being of others. By the end of the year, Luca felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had witnessed the transformation of a centuries-old institution, seen the impact of genuine leadership, and experienced personal growth that he would carry for the rest of his life. Pope Prevost's guidance had inspired him, his fellow guards, and countless others, showing that leadership rooted in empathy, humility, and moral courage could create lasting change. And so, as Luca stood once again in his ceremonial uniform, overlooking the Vatican courtyard, he felt a deep sense of pride and purpose. He understood that his role was not merely to protect the Pope physically, but to uphold and embody the values that Pope Prevost represented. Every patrol, every interaction, every quiet moment was part of a larger story, a story of leadership, compassion, and the enduring power of human connection. In reflecting on his journey, Luca realized that history was not only written in grand events or official records, but in the quiet, meaningful moments that shaped people's hearts. Serving under Pope Prevost had given him the privilege of witnessing these moments firsthand. He had seen a leader who inspired loyalty not through fear or authority, but through empathy, respect, and unwavering dedication. And he had learned that true leadership created ripples far beyond the walls of the Vatican, touching lives in ways both seen and unseen. As the sun set over the Vatican, casting a warm glow across the ancient stone walls, Luca felt a sense of fulfillment unlike any he had known before. The world outside might only see the grandeur and history of the Vatican, But he knew the truth, the quiet, profound humanity of Pope Robert Prevost and the extraordinary impact of his leadership. And for Luca, this understanding brought not only pride but a deep sense of purpose, a reminder that the greatest stories are often the ones told through actions, humility, and the everyday courage to lead with heart.